Her last wish before marriage was not what anyone expected. She wanted to see her ex-husband one final time. No one could have imagined what happened when they met again. Stay with me right to the end, because this story will surprise you and stay with you forever. Before we dive in, take a quick second to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment below where in the world you are watching from. Enjoy the story. She was just days away from walking down the aisle, a new life waiting, a new chapter ready to begin. The wedding dress hung perfectly pressed in her closet. The flowers were ordered. The venue was decorated. Everything was ready for what should have been the happiest day of her life. But Rachel Martinez couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something important, something that would haunt her forever if she didn't face it now. Rachel was 29 years old, a successful marketing director in San Francisco. She had worked hard to rebuild her life after her divorce 3 years earlier. The split had been messy, painful, and left scars that took months to heal. But she had moved forward. She had met David, a kind and gentle architect who loved her completely. He proposed on a beach in Monterey, and she said yes without hesitation. Davy's ex-husband was everything Heard wasn't. Patient, understanding, supportive. He never raised his voice. He never disappeared for days without explanation. He never made her feel like she was walking on eggshells in her own home. But now, with only 5 days until the wedding, Rachel found herself thinking about the past. Not because she wanted to go back, but because she needed closure, real closure. The kind that comes from facing something head-on instead of running away from it. Her best friend Maya noticed the change immediately. They were having their final dress fitting when Rachel went quiet, staring at herself in the mirror with an expression Maya had never seen before. "What's wrong?" Maya asked, adjusting the veil behind Rachel's shoulders. "You look beautiful, but you look like you're a million miles away." Rachel took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something, but promise me you won't think I'm crazy." Maya sat down on the small chair beside the mirror. "I promise." "What is it?" "I to want see James before I get married." Maya's eyes widened. "James? Your ex-husband James? The one who put you through hell for 2 years?" Rachel nodded slowly. "I know how it sounds. I know everyone thinks I'm insane for even thinking about him. But Maya, I've been having the same dream every night for the past 2 weeks. In the dream, I'm walking down the aisle toward David, and right before I say my vows, I turn around, and James is sitting in the back row. He's just watching me with this sad look in his eyes. And then I wake up." Maya crossed her arms. "Rachel, that's just nerves. Every bride gets cold feet. It doesn't mean you need to see your ex. But what if it's more than that? What if I'm carrying something with me that I need to let go of before I can fully commit to David? What if I'm not being fair to him by bringing unfinished business into our marriage?" Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question Rachel had been dreading. "What does David think about this?" Rachel looked down at her hands. "He doesn't know yet." "You haven't told him? How do I tell the man I'm about to marry that I want to see my ex-husband? How do I explain that without making him think I still have feelings for James?" Maya stood up and walked to the window. "Rachel, you divorced James for good reasons. He was controlling. He had a temper. He made you feel small. Why would you want to put yourself through seeing him again?" Rachel's voice grew softer. "Because I never got to say goodbye properly. The divorce was so ugly, so full of lawyers and accusations and hurt feelings. We never had a moment where we could just be two people who once loved each other, acknowledging that it was over. I think I need that. I think I need to close that chapter completely before I can start the next one. And what if seeing him opens old wounds? What if it makes things worse?" Rachel met her friend's eyes in the mirror. "Then at least I'll know. At least I won't spend the rest of my life wondering." That evening, Rachel sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. She had James's number saved under a contact she'd never deleted, even though she hadn't used it in 3 years. Her finger hovered over his name for nearly an hour before she finally pressed call. The phone rang 4 times before he answered. His voice was exactly as she remembered it. Deep, familiar, cautious. "Rachel." "Hi, James." There was a long pause. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Is everything okay?" She took a shaky breath. "I'm getting married on Saturday." Another pause. "Congratulations," I heard through mutual friends. "David seems like a good man." "He is." "James, I'm calling because I have something I need to ask you. It might sound strange, but I need to see you. Before the wedding, just once." The silence stretched so long that Rachel thought he might have hung up. Finally, he spoke. "Why? Because I think we both deserve a proper goodbye. Because what we had was real, even though it didn't work. Because I want to start my marriage with a clean slate, and I can't do that if I'm carrying unresolved feelings about us." James was quiet again. When she heard his voice, it was softer than before. "Where do you want to meet?" They agreed to meet the next day at Golden Gate Park, at the same bench where they used to sit during happier times in their marriage. It was neutral ground, public, safe. Rachel spent the night tossing and turning, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning, she told David she was having lunch with an old college friend. The lie felt heavy on her tongue, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. Not yet. Not until she understood what she hoped to accomplish. She arrived at the park 15 minutes early and sat on the bench, watching joggers and dog walkers pass by. The San Francisco fog was just beginning to lift, and the morning sun created long shadows through the eucalyptus trees. This place held so many memories, some beautiful, some painful, all complicated. When she saw James walking toward her, her heart did something unexpected. Not a flutter of romantic feeling, but a recognition of shared history. He looked older, more tired than she remembered. His dark hair had threads of gray at the temples. He was wearing a simple blue sweater and jeans, the kind of casual outfit he used to wear on weekend mornings when they would read the newspaper together and plan their day. He sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat together, watching the world move around them. Two people who had once shared everything now feeling like strangers. Finally, James broke the silence. "You look good, Rachel. Happy. Thank you. So do you. Are you seeing anyone?" He shook his head. "I've dated a little, but nothing serious. After what happened with us, I realized I had some work to do on myself before I could be good for anyone else." Rachel turned to look at him directly for the first time. "That's actually why I wanted to see you. I've been thinking about what went wrong between us, and I realized I never really understood your side of things." James looked surprised by her words. He had expected anger, accusations, maybe even regret about calling him, but not this, not curiosity about his perspective. "My side?" he said quietly. "Rachel, I was the one who messed everything up. I was controlling, jealous, impossible to live with. You don't need to hear my excuses. I'm not looking for excuses. I'm looking for understanding. For 3 years, I've carried this anger toward you, and I realize that anger has been weighing me down more than I knew. I want to let it go, but I can't let go of something I don't fully understand." James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from their marriage. He always did that when he was trying to find the right words for something difficult. "You remember how I was when we first met?" he asked. "I was working at that startup, putting in 80-hour weeks, convinced I was going to change the world. I was so focused on success, on proving myself, and then you came along, and suddenly I had something to lose." Rachel nodded, remembering those early days. James had been ambitious, driven, full of big dreams and bigger plans. "The problem was," James continued, "I didn't know how to handle having something precious. I'd never had that before. My parents divorced when I was 12. My dad left and never looked back. My mom worked 3 jobs just to keep us afloat. I learned early that people leave, people disappear. So when I fell in love with you, really fell in love, I panicked." "How do you mean?" "I started trying to control everything. Where you went, who you talked to, how you spent your time. I told myself I was protecting our relationship, but really I was trying to guarantee that you wouldn't leave me. I was so afraid of losing you that I became the exact reason you had to go." Rachel felt something shift inside her chest. She had spent so long focusing on how his behavior had hurt her that she had never considered the fear behind it. "James, why didn't you ever tell me this during our marriage? Why didn't you explain what you were feeling?" "Because I didn't understand it myself back then. I just knew that when you talked about working late or going out with friends, I felt this panic, like you were slipping away from me. So I would get angry, or I would demand to know every detail of your day, or I would suggest we stay home together instead. I thought I was being loving. I thought I was showing you how much you meant to me, but it felt like prison to me. Rachel said softly. "It felt like you didn't trust me." "I didn't trust anyone, not even myself." James turned to face her fully. "Rachel, I need you to know something. The day you asked for the divorce, when you were crying and telling me you couldn't live like that anymore, part of me was relieved. Relieved? Because I knew you were right. I knew I was hurting you, and I hated myself for it. But I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to love you without trying to own you. So when you said you were leaving, it was like you were saving both of us from something toxic." They sat in silence for several minutes, watching a family with young children feed ducks at the nearby pond. The children were laughing, carefree, innocent of the complicated adult emotions playing out on the bench nearby. "What happened after?" Rachel asked. "After the divorce was final?" James smiled sadly. "I fell apart for about 6 months. Drank too much, barely went to work, pushed away anyone who tried to help. Then my sister staged an intervention. She made me go to therapy. Therapy helped? More than I ever thought it would. I learned about attachment styles, about how childhood trauma shows up in adult relationships. I learned that love isn't supposed to feel desperate and anxious. Real love is supposed to feel secure, trusting, peaceful." Rachel felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "That's what I have with David. It feels peaceful." "I'm glad," James said, and she could hear the sincerity in his voice. "That's what you always deserved. That's what I should have given you, but didn't know how to." A jogger passed by them, earbuds in, focused on his morning run. Normal life continuing around them while they sat in this bubble of honesty and reflection. "Can I ask you something?" Rachel said. "Of course. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had figured this out while we were still married? If you had gone to therapy then? If we had learned to communicate better?" James was quiet for a long time. "Every day," he finally said. "But Rachel, I don't think I was ready to hear those hard truths about myself until I lost you. Some people need to hit rock bottom before they can climb back up. I was one of those people." Rachel wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "I spent so long being angry at you, but sitting here now, listening to you, I realize I was also angry at myself for not speaking up sooner about how I was feeling, for not demanding better communication, for walking away instead of fighting for us." "You did fight for us," James said gently. "For 2 years, you tried everything. You suggested couples counseling, and I said we didn't need it. You tried to talk to me about how my jealousy was affecting you, and I got defensive. You asked for space to breathe, and I gave you more rules instead. Walking away wasn't giving up, Rachel. It was self-preservation." As the morning progressed, they found themselves talking about things they had never discussed during their marriage. James told her about his childhood, about watching his parents fight, about the fear that had lived in his chest for as long as he could remember. Rachel shared her own struggles, about how she had learned to make herself small to avoid conflict, about how she had lost herself trying to be the perfect wife. The conversation was painful but healing, like cleaning out an old wound so it could finally heal properly. Around noon, James looked at his watch. "I should probably let you get back to your wedding preparations." Rachel nodded, suddenly realizing how much time had passed. They had been talking for over 3 hours, and it felt like minutes. "James," she said, as they both stood up from the bench, "thank you for meeting me today. Thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for calling. I didn't realize how much I needed this conversation too." They stood facing each other, two people who had once promised to love each other forever, now preparing to say goodbye for what might be the last time. "I want you to know something," James said. "David is lucky to have you, and you deserve all the happiness in the world." Rachel felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I want you to know that I forgive you completely, and I hope you can forgive yourself." James's eyes filled with tears. "I'm working on it." They hugged then, a gentle, healing embrace that held no romantic longing, only mutual respect and closure. When they pulled apart, Rachel felt lighter than she had in years. As she walked back to her car, Rachel realized that the dream would probably stop now. She had said goodbye properly. She had understood the story completely. Most importantly, she had let go of the anger and resentment that had been taking up space in her heart, space that now belonged fully to David and their future together. But there was still one more conversation she needed to have before Saturday. That evening, Rachel sat in her apartment, staring at her phone again. But this time, she wasn't calling James. This time, she needed to call David. The conversation she'd had that morning had changed something fundamental inside her, and she couldn't walk down the aisle in 3 days carrying this secret. David answered on the first ring, his voice warm and familiar. "Hey, beautiful, how was lunch with your college friend?" Rachel's stomach twisted at the lie. "David, can you come over? There's something I need to tell you, something important." She heard the concern in his voice immediately. "Of course. Is everything okay? You sound upset." "I'm not upset exactly, but we need to talk, in person." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Rachel spent those 20 minutes pacing her living room, rehearsing what she would say. How do you tell the man you're about to marry that you spent the morning with your ex-husband? How do you explain that it was exactly what you needed without making him feel like he wasn't enough? When David knocked on her door, Rachel's hands were shaking. She opened it to find him standing there with concern written all over his face. He was holding a small bouquet of her favorite flowers, white peonies, something he did whenever he sensed she was having a difficult day. "Talk to me," he said, setting the flowers on her kitchen counter and pulling her into his arms. "What's going on?" Rachel pulled back gently and led him to the couch. "David, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear the whole story before you respond. Can you do that for me?" David's expression grew more serious, but he nodded. "Of course." Rachel took a deep breath. "I didn't have lunch with a college friend today. I met with James, my ex-husband." She watched David's face carefully. His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't interrupt. "For the past 2 weeks, I've been having this recurring dream about our wedding. In the dream, James is there, watching me walk down the aisle, and I wake up feeling like something is unfinished. I realized I never got closure from our marriage. The divorce was so messy, so angry, that we never had a chance to say goodbye properly." David was quiet, his hands folded in his lap. Rachel could see him processing, choosing his words carefully. "I called him yesterday and asked to meet. We talked for 3 hours this morning, about what went wrong in our marriage, about the hurt we caused each other, about forgiveness and healing." "Why didn't you tell me?" David asked quietly. His voice wasn't angry, just hurt. Rachel's heart broke a little at the pain in his eyes. "Because I was scared you wouldn't understand. Because I was afraid you'd think I still had feelings for him. Because I didn't want to hurt you with something that was really about me healing, not about him." "Do you still have feelings for him?" Rachel met his eyes directly. "No, David, not romantic feelings. What I realized today is that I've been carrying anger and resentment for 3 years, and that anger was taking up space in my heart, space that belongs to you now. I needed to let it go before I could give you all of me." David was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Then he looked up at her. "Rachel, I'm hurt that you didn't tell me. I'm your partner. We're supposed to face difficult things together. You're right. I should have told you. I was being a coward." But David wasn't finished. "I'm also proud of you for doing something that scared you because you thought it was right. And I'm grateful that you're telling me now, before our wedding, instead of carrying this secret into our marriage." Rachel felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "You're not angry?" David reached for her hands. "I'm human. So yes, part of me is bothered that you spent the morning with your ex-husband. But the bigger part of me understands that you did it for us, for our future, and I love you for being brave enough to face something difficult." Rachel squeezed his hands. "David, there's something else I need to tell you. Something James said that made me realize why I needed to see him." "What's that?" "He told me about his childhood, about why he was so controlling during our marriage. He was terrified of being abandoned, so he tried to control everything to make sure I wouldn't leave. But the irony is that his controlling behavior is exactly what drove me away." David nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Hurt people. But here's what I realized," Rachel continued. "I've been doing something similar with you, just in a different way. I've been so afraid of bringing any baggage from my past into our relationship that I've been hiding parts of myself. Like today, instead of trusting you to understand and support me, I lied and handled it alone." David's expression softened. "Rachel, I fell in love with all of you, including your past, including your scars, including the parts of you that are still healing. You don't have to be perfect for me, I know that in my head, but my heart has been protecting itself. Today, talking to James, I realized that real love isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about trusting your partner with your whole self, even the messy parts." They sat together in comfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, David spoke. "Can I ask what you and James talked about? I don't need details, but I'd like to understand." Rachel told him about the conversation, about James's therapy and growth, about their mutual apologies and forgiveness. She explained how hearing his side of their story had helped her let go of anger she didn't even realize she was still carrying. "It sounds like you both got what you needed," David said when she finished. "We did. And David, I want you to know that sitting with him today, I felt absolutely certain that you are the person I'm supposed to be with. Not because you're the opposite of him, but because you're exactly who you are." David smiled for the first time since she'd started talking. "So no cold feet about Saturday?" Rachel laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "None at all. If anything, I'm more excited to marry you now than I was this morning." They spent the rest of the evening talking about their wedding, about their future, about the kind of marriage they wanted to build together. A marriage based on honesty, trust, and the courage to face difficult things as a team. 2 days later, on the morning of her wedding, Rachel woke up without the dream for the first time in 2 weeks. She felt peaceful, complete, ready. As Maya helped her into her wedding dress, her friend asked, "Any regrets about seeing James?" Rachel looked at herself in the mirror, seeing a woman who was whole, healed, ready for love. "None at all. I needed to close that door completely before I could walk through this new one." The wedding was everything Rachel had hoped for. The morning fog had lifted to reveal a perfect San Francisco afternoon. The venue was filled with family and friends. Flowers bloomed everywhere, and David looked impossibly handsome waiting for her at the altar. But the most beautiful part was how Rachel felt walking down the aisle, light, free, completely present. There were no ghosts from her past haunting the moment, no unfinished business weighing her down. She was fully there, fully his, fully ready for whatever came next. When the officiant asked if she took David to be her husband, Rachel's voice was clear and strong, "I do." As they kissed to seal their marriage, Rachel caught sight of someone unexpected in the back row. For just a moment, her heart skipped, but it wasn't James. It was her father, who had been running late and slipped in during the ceremony. Later, at the reception, as Rachel and David shared their first dance as husband and wife, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, the failed marriage that had taught her what she didn't want, the healing that had prepared her for what she did want, the courage to face her past that had freed her to embrace her future. Sometimes, she realized, you have to say goodbye to who you were before you can fully become who you're meant to be. Sometimes you have to close one story completely before you can begin writing the next one. As the music played and David spun her around the dance floor, Rachel felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for her past, even the painful parts. Gratitude for her present, full of love and possibility, and gratitude for her future, whatever it might hold. The last wish before her marriage had been exactly what she needed. Not to go back, but to move forward completely free. But what happened next would test everything Rachel thought she knew about closure, forgiveness, and the power of facing your past. Because some stories have more chapters than we expect, and some people from our past have more to say than we realize. 3 months after the wedding, Rachel thought her story with James was finished forever. She was wrong. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while she was making coffee in her new home with David. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice on the other end made her blood run cold. "Mrs. Martinez? This is Dr. Sarah Chen from UCSF Medical Center. I'm calling about James Patterson. You're listed as his emergency contact." Rachel's hand trembled as she set down her coffee mug. "That's impossible. We've been divorced for 3 years. I'm married to someone else now. I understand this is confusing, but Mr. Patterson was admitted last night after a serious accident. He's been asking for you. He says there's something urgent he needs to tell you before his surgery this afternoon." "What kind of accident?" Rachel heard herself ask, even though part of her wanted to hang up. "A car accident on Highway 101. He's stable, but he needs emergency surgery to relieve pressure on his brain. Mrs. Martinez, he's been very insistent that he speak with you. He says it's about something that happened during your marriage, something you need to know." Rachel felt the world tilt around her. David had already left for work. She was alone with this impossible decision. "I'll be there in an hour." The drive to the hospital felt like a nightmare. Every rational part of Rachel's mind told her to turn around. She had closure. She had moved on. She had a husband who loved her and a life that made sense. But James's voice from their conversation in the park echoed in her memory. There are things you don't know, things I should have told you years ago. When she walked into his hospital room, Rachel barely recognized him. James's face was swollen and bruised, his head wrapped in bandages. Machines beeped around him, monitoring his vital signs. His eyes were closed, and for a moment she thought he was unconscious. Then he opened them and saw her. "Rachel." His voice was barely a whisper. "You came. The doctor said you asked for me, that you needed to tell me something urgent." James tried to sit up but winced in pain. "The nurses say I might not make it through the surgery. There's too much swelling." Anne. Rachel felt much damage, unexpected surge of emotion. She had spent years angry at this man, but seeing him broken and scared stirred something protective in her. "Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. Maybe. But if I'm not, there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you during our marriage. Something I definitely should have told you when we met in the park." Rachel pulled a chair close to his bed. "What are you talking about?" James's eyes filled with tears. "The night before you asked for the divorce. Do you remember where I said I was? You said you were working late at the office." James shook his head slowly. "I lied. I wasn't at the office, Rachel. I was with someone else." The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. She felt all the air leave her lungs. "What do you mean?" "I was having an affair for 6 months before our divorce. Her name was Catherine. She worked at the marketing firm we contracted with." Rachel stared at him in disbelief. The room seemed to spin around her. All this time, she had blamed herself for not fighting harder for their marriage. She had spent years wondering if she had given up too easily, and he had been cheating on her. "Why are you telling me this now?" she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me when we met in the park?" "Because I'm a coward. Because I wanted you to think better of me than I deserved. Because I was selfish enough to want your forgiveness without earning it." Rachel stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, she could see the San Francisco Bay stretching out toward the horizon, the same view she had looked at from their apartment during their marriage. How many nights had she stared out at that water, wondering what was wrong with her, why she couldn't make her husband happy. "There's more," James said quietly. Rachel turned back to him, her face pale. "More?" Rachel never got to hear what else James needed to tell her. His condition worsened rapidly, and he was rushed into emergency surgery before he could finish. He never woke up. Standing in that hospital corridor, Rachel realized that some stories don't have clean endings, some wounds don't heal completely, and some truths come too late to change anything. But she also understood that her choice to see James before her wedding hadn't been about him at all. It had been about choosing honesty over fear, choosing to face difficult truths instead of running from them. When David found her there hours later, she told him everything about the affair, about the lies, about the complicated mess that real life sometimes becomes. And once again, he chose to love her through it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close a door that was never meant to stay open. Sometimes healing means accepting that you'll never have all the answers. And sometimes love means choosing each other again and again, even when the past refuses to stay buried. Rachel's last wish before marriage gave her exactly what she needed, just not in the way she expected. True closure isn't about perfect endings. It's about choosing your future over your past, no matter how messy that choice might be.